please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Celebrating 16 years of Young Turks.
On the show today, we're going to focus on publishers. First up, Huff Post, a global player that's looking to expand its foothold in India. We also meet homegrown entertainment content player Scoop Whoop. And to complete the loop, we bring you the story of an online video analytics startup called Viduli. Founded by media mogul Arriana Huffington in 2005, Huffington Post, or what's now known as Huff Post, started with a simple idea of being a megaphone for people to tell their stories. Today, Huff Post has 168 million monthly visitors across 17 countries and is the most shared site on Facebook. Interestingly, 50% of all Huff Post readers are outside the US, and they've had an India presence since 2015. Megha Vishwanath caught up with their global editor-in-chief Lydia Paul-Green in the capital to decode the publisher's India plans.
What was your approach when you started off? Did you want to turn everything around or did you want to just make minor changes along the way?
When I came in, I knew that I wasn't going to out Arriana. You know, she had this great legacy. But, you know, I think the idea was to not so much bring in another celebrity, but bring in someone with a strong background in in-depth journalism to think about what could be the next phase for this.
But another thing that you mentioned or you keep mentioning in a lot of your interviews is that you want to focus on original reporting. Mm-hmm. How do you plan on doing that at HuffPost? When you focus on original reporting, doesn't it put you right up against, say, the Washington Post or the New York Times that have huge newsrooms, large staffs? So what would be HuffPost's differentiator in that space?
Well, original reporting is not a new thing at HuffPost. You know.
Okay, more original reporting. Those were your exact words.
I think that the age of aggregation is really over. If it even existed at any point. When I was at the New York Times, just right before I left, about a year before I left, they created a team called the Express Desk that was really largely devoted to aggregating not from other news organizations but from social media. And in reality, aggregation has also happened across different platforms, right? The evening news in any country is going to be influenced by what's on the front page. And really, at the end of the day, it's about bringing new information to the world and doing reporting. Now, as you said, you know, the New York Times and the Washington Post, they have these huge newsrooms. But to me, it's not really about numbers. It's about deciding what are the stories you really want to own and how are you going to have an approach that differentiates you. And for me, the big differentiator for HuffPost is we have a very clear idea of who our audience is. And it's essentially not an elite audience. We don't see ourselves as serving the kind of people who ultimately are going to pull out their credit card and pay for a subscription to the Washington Post or the New York Times. We see ourselves as serving ordinary working people who nevertheless need access to high quality journalism.
But that brings me to my next question. Do you have any specific or India-specific strategies or you know, is India going to be a part of the bigger HuffPost DNA? And some of these themes would be common across all your international publications.
You know, we're seeing a rise of ethnic and sectarian divisions. Clearly, that's been a factor here in India. Climate change, obviously, a big global story. Inequality is a big global story. So these are things that we share in common. And the wonderful thing about HuffPost is that in each of the markets where we're present, we have a substantial local newsroom that is reporting and telling stories for the people that live there. And I think the goal is that now we take it to the next level, which is to take some of those stories that actually do have the broader relevance and bubble them up so that we can share them with the entire network.
Okay, now the big question, right? Where's the money? And what are the revenue streams? Is new media facing the same challenges that the old media faced?
I think that we're facing them in a far more accelerated way than old media did, right? In much of the world, you've seen almost all of the advertising shift to digital, and of course, you know, print dollars become digital pennies, become mobile fractions of pennies, and we've all seen that happen. And of course, you have the duopoly of Facebook and Google that are eating up 90% of the growth in the mobile advertising market. I think you've seen some bright spots. Certain, particularly legacy news organizations, organizations like the New York Times and the Washington Post have been very, and the Financial Times, I would also put in that category, have been very successful at implementing digital paywalls. So getting people to subscribe to their digital edition, I think, has been a very positive trend. But I think where all of this is heading is to a kind of convergence, and where you're going to see a much tighter integration of content into companies that are serving connectivity. And Huff Post, of course, is part of a much larger company called Oath, which was created when AOL and Yahoo came together. And that, in turn, is owned by Verizon, which is one of the biggest mobile phone companies in the world. You know, I think you're going to see a world in which the content and the connectivity actually come together, and the financing of the creation of the content will be integrated into what you're paying for your connectivity. That seems to be the direction that we're going in.
Just to understand the business model a little better from an India perspective, HuffPost in the States has become a part of Verizon. How does that change, or does that affect India in any way?
I mean, it was once the case that when an international media company wanted to gain a foothold in a new market, the first place they would go is to a publisher or a TV station. And I think now you're starting to see news organizations or content companies look to telcos as the partners, because you cut out the middleman. You just go directly to the consumer via the way that they're connecting to the net.
All right. Overall, what is your take on the new media, especially in India? Have you seen any particular trends emerge?
I think that the digital space in India is really where all the action is right now. I think it's incredibly vibrant. I'm particularly interested in how people are sharing information. You're seeing a lot of one-to-one sharing, via WhatsApp, and what's the other app? The one where you put your two phones together and you
share it?
Share it, yes.
Okay, okay.
So this idea that even without having to use your own data, you can share a piece of content from one person to another, I think is really remarkable. We don't see that kind of behavior in the United States, but there's clearly a thirst to be able to share not just text articles, but really rich media, and people are finding ways around the cost of connectivity in order to be able to share things with one another. There are a bunch of new players that I think are doing really exciting work. Scoop Whoop, of course, they borrowed a bit from the BuzzFeed model, and really got into the kind of viral entertainment world. And then, of course, you're seeing big digital news and entertainment players that are cropping up here now. Vice apparently is coming into India. BuzzFeed has been here and I think has done quite well. The digital space in India right now is really hot. It's clear that there is a huge information-hungry population that's emerging. They're getting their first smartphones. They're getting their first, LTE data plans, and they're hungry to consume content. And I think there are a lot of people who are all lining up to produce content.
So the two big things that I picked up from that interview: aggregators you need to watch out, and content is going to clearly become a key offering for telcos.